Back in the Liberty Garden, Iris and En are on the move. Iris asks En why he's looking in the Liberty Garden. Wouldn't it be better to look in the castle? En says no. You see, the reason why my father knew that Reshiram was sealed in the Dragon Spiral Tower is because we're the descendants of the family that sealed the dragons. Iris says, really? En says yes. And when we entered the tower 2 years ago, I wanted to visit my ancestor, the king that unified Unova, in hopes of gaining his blessing for the path that I was about to walk. But in his tomb, there was a carving on the wall that caught my attention. But I couldn't understand it until I learned that my father was looking here for Zekrom. Iris says, well, what is it? En says, it read, the path to ideals begins with liberty. Iris says, so you think the path starts here in the Liberty Garden? En says, yes, it's somewhere here. We just need to find it. Iris says, I think I know. Roxy said that there's a door near the northern point of the maze. That might be it. En says, it has to be. So they make their way to the mysterious door, carefully avoiding Team Plasma members along the way. Once they reach the door, Iris asks, how do they get in? En says, there's one saying that was passed down in his family for generations. With the king's approval, you may enter. En then pulls out a relic with the seal of the king on it. It begins to react to the door. Then, suddenly, nothing happens. Both Iris and En are stumped. Iris goes to beat on the door out of frustration. Then, she falls through. En wonders what's going on. Then Iris pops back through. I don't know how, but the door is no longer solid, she says. She then tells En to come. This has to be the way. En then walks through as the door re-solidifies behind him. Inside, there's a stairway that seems to descend forever, but lining the walls are depictions of an era gone by. Iris and En stop to view them. En says that Unova's forgotten history is written on these walls, a depiction of a great battle. And then something catches En's eye as he walks deeper. A picture of Reshiram and Zekrom on the wall, but between the two of them is a third dragon, one En has never seen before. En mentions that this dragon looks incomplete, like it is a husk. Below is a phrase carved into the wall, the frozen virtue, it reads. Iris says, that's strange, I've never heard of a third dragon. En says, me neither, as the two continue down into the stairway. Over with Ash and Riolu, they look on as the Aurasphere is bouncing around in the air. Then, it is tossed back to Riolu. Riolu catches it and is puzzled by what is going on. It can feel a presence next to it, and Riolu throws the Aurasphere at it again. This time, it connects, and what it hits becomes visible, falling to the ground. Ash rushes to the Pokemon to see if it is okay. The Pokemon then lets out a cry of excitement. Riolu takes a defensive stance, ready to attack, but the Pokemon sees this as a sign of play, and it happily engages with Riolu. This confuses Riolu, as it doesn't sense a threat, but it doesn't know what to make of it. Ash tells Riolu to stand down. This Pokemon doesn't seem to want to harm them, it just seems that it wants to play. Ash turns to the Pokemon. It says its cry, Victini. Ash says, Victini? Well, you seem full of energy. Riolu is apprehensive, but comes over to Ash. Victini approaches Riolu and playfully engages it once more. Riolu starts to trust its feelings and lets down its guard. Riolu and Victini seem to hit it off really well. Victini seems to be especially playful. Ash is curious and asks Victini if it was the presence that Riolu felt earlier in the castle. Victini nods. Ash wonders to himself, how did Victini get down here? How did we get down here? And where exactly is here? Then Ash hears it, a menacing cry from within the catacombs from whence they came. Ash thinks, that's not good. Whatever it is sounds close, and it sounds angry. Ash thinks that it's the Shadow Triad, and they've found their way down here. Ash then turns to Victini. Hey Victini, do you know a way out of here? Victini stops playing with Riolu. Its expression turns from one of happiness to one of sadness, but Ash doesn't understand why. Ash then tells Victini he would love to stay here and play, but the castle is under attack, and if they don't do something, then some really bad people will find this place and destroy it. Victini's expression turns from one of sadness to one of concern. It nods and motions to Ash and Riolu to follow it. They proceed out of the tomb and into another part of the catacombs, eventually coming to a dead end. Ash tells Victini that this is not what he meant. They need to get out of here. Victini then places its hand on the wall and it starts to react. Victini then phases through the wall. Amazed, Ash and Riolu follow. They end up in a winding staircase, and you can hear talking coming from the bottom. Riolu senses someone it knows and someone it doesn't. Ash says, that's Iris. Concerned, the two run off in the direction of the voices, with Victini in tow. As Ash and Riolu get closer to the bottom of the stairs, the voices get louder, and one of them has frustration in it. Ash and Riolu rush to the bottom of the stairs, ready for a battle. There stands Iris, and a man that Ash doesn't know. Ash asks Iris if she is okay, as Riolu readies a Aurasphere to attack the man. Iris, not expecting to see Ash down here, tells him to calm down. There's no enemies here. Ash then looks at En. He looks familiar. Who is he? Iris introduces En and tells Ash that he's here to help stop Team Plasma. Ash, now embarrassed, changes his mood right away. Ash tries to introduce himself to En, but En isn't hearing him. His full attention is on Riolu. The presence of this Pokemon feels familiar to him. Iris then calls to En snapping him out of his trance. En apologizes for his rudeness and acknowledges Ash. Then, Ash calls to Victini. Iris asks, "What's that?" Victini appears to the group, still playing with Riolu. Ash says, "A Pokemon that me and Riolu met." Then, Ash tells Iris that they were attacked by the Shadow Triad in his room. Iris cuts Ash off. "We know. That's why we're down here." Ash says, "What do you mean?" En tells Ash that Team Plasma has come to this play in search of the legendary Pokemon Zekrom. Zekrom? Ash questions. En says yes. After their failure 2 years ago to take control of Unova using the other half, Reshiram, Ash says, "Wait, you're the one who resurrected Reshiram," looking at En. En hangs his head in shame. "Yes, I was misguided by my father. While I wanted freedom for everyone and their Pokemon, he wanted to subjugate everyone and their Pokemon. He was blinded by his ambitions and didn't care who he used in the process, even his own son." Ash then asks the hard question. "Well, why are you here? Where is Reshiram?" En replies, "I'm here to stop my father, and as far as Reshiram, I've hidden it in a place in hopes that no one will ever find it." Ash looks at En, then Riolu, who is playing with Victini, and asks, "What do you think, buddy?" Riolu feels out the emotions of En. It nods in approval, which is good enough for Ash. Ash then asks, "So, what's the move?" En says, "We need to find Zekrom. It should be here." As En looks around the room, Ash says, "Well, I hate to break it to you, but there's no Pokemon in here." En says, "True, but Zekrom won't look like a Pokemon. It would look like a round, black stone." Back with Roxy, Damon, and Carlita, the three are on the move through the hidden passages of the castle, trying to avoid Team Plasma. Roxy asks where they're heading. Damon says there's one place left that not even they can get to. After some close calls and a lot of running, the three of them end at a wall at the end of a hallway. Roxy says, "Great, now we're trapped. What are we supposed to do now?" Damon tells her to be quiet. He holds a rock with a strange symbol to the wall. They can hear Team Plasma grunts closing in on them. Carlita tells Damon to hurry, and just as she says that, the rock starts to glow. Damon says quick, and Carlita pushes Roxy through the wall, and Damon jumps through as well, just as the Team Plasma grunts turn the corner, barely missing them. Roxy asks, "Where are they?" Damon tells her that they are in the king's tomb below the castle. Roxy says, "So the king is buried here?" Carlita says, "Supposedly, but no one has ever actually found him. This is just a labyrinth that just goes on and on. You can become lost in it." Roxy says, "Well, maybe we'll find the king's tomb." Damon says, "Highly unlikely. Our family has guarded this place for generations, and no one has ever found it. This was just a place built to confuse anyone down here, with no hope for escape." Roxy says, "Great. So how are we supposed to get out of here?" Damon says, "With this." He holds up the king's journal, and in the back is a map that his family has spent decades drawing out while they were exploring. There are 4 other exits, one in the garden, 2 at the base of the cliffs of the castle, and 1 in the main dining hall. The ones we need to get to are the ones at the base of the cliffs, as they are the furthest from the castle and offer the best chance for escape. Roxy says, "Well, then we better get moving. So which way?" Carlita points, so they head off, hearing a sound echo in the labyrinth. Back with Ash and everyone, they are searching the room for the black stone, and as they search the surrounding room, En looks over the walls. There is more to the story of the war in ancient Unova. En says that he never knew the war was as brutal as it is depicted here. For En, this just solidifies the fact that he can't let his father get his hands on Zekrom. Ash then calls to everyone. Riolu has stopped, and it is focusing on one of the stairways that lead into the room. It can sense someone coming. Riolu takes a defensive stance as Victini makes itself invisible. For a while, Riolu's mood changes from defensive to excitement. Riolu rushes to the doorway, and from the darkness emerges Roxy, Damon, and Carlita. Ash is relieved to see his friend. Damon and Carlita are surprised to see anyone down here. Damon immediately demands to know how they got down here. Only the descendants of the king have access to this place. Iris says she came within through the Liberty Garden. Carlita asks how. That's impossible. In order to get to the doorway, you need, and cuts her off, the seal of the king as he pulls out his seal and shows it to him. Damon becomes enraged, demanding to know where he got that from, and explains that it has been passed down in his family since the time of the last Unovan War, as he, like them, is a descendant from that same family. Damon and Carlita are in stunned silence, but Damon snaps back, claiming that he refuses to believe this claim. En tells him he doesn't matter if he believes him. What matters is what happens now. En says he knows that Zekrom is here in the tomb. They need to show him where, so that way he can stop Team Plasma. Carlita says, "I'm sorry, we can't. Not because we don't want to, but because we don't know where it is." En says, "What do you mean? I know that you're supposed to be the guardians of the Black Stone, and you're telling me you don't know where it is? How are you supposed to be guarding it?" Damon says, "We know what we guard and where it is supposed to be, but we don't know the location of where it is held." En says, "Explain what you mean." Damon tells them, "Zekrom is sealed in the chamber of the king. but no matter how many times they've searched, our family has never found it. Iris says, well, if we can't find it, then it will be safe, because Team Plasma won't be able to find it either. And says, no, the one person that would be able to find it would be my father. He would level this castle to get what he wants. Just then, Ash says, hey, I think I know. Everyone turns in shock. What? Damon says. Ash says, well, not me, but I know someone who does. Damon demands to know who. Ash says, Victini. Victini? Damon replies, impossible. I've lived here my whole life, and I've never seen anything like that. Victini is just a legend. Carlita says, yeah, but a lot of weird things do happen around the castle. Damon, you have to admit that. Just because we've never seen it doesn't mean it's not there. Just then, Victini appears, stunning Damon and Carlita into silence. There it is, right before their eyes, after all this time. Damon says, well, okay, let's say this is Victini. How do we know that it knows where the king is laid to rest? Ash says, I think it does because it took me there to escape the Shadow Triad. Back up top with the Shadow Triad, they have finally seized the passages of the castle, including the security room. Andrio's combing through the cameras, looking for any signs other than Team Plasma, but there's nothing, and he is getting frustrated with the lack of progression on their part. Necrosa says, why did you think it would be so easy? You and I both know they are in a part of the castle no eyes can see. Then Culrus and Getsus enter the room. Precisely, Getsus says, but that's why I'm here. Eclipse then says, well, what do you know that we don't? Culrus then pulls out the relic, the seal of the king. Culrus states that this is the key to a door that is unseen. Andrio then says, well, then how do we find a door that can't be seen? Culrus says, with this, and he pulls out a device. Culrus says, this device emits a pulse to map out passageways in the surrounding areas. The best thing is that it will map out passageways unseen by the eye. Culrus then gives the device to each of the Shadow Triad and orders them to fan out around the castle and report when they have found a doorway. Meanwhile, Culrus flips over his handheld to a screen and a noise that he's been tracking. What are you? He says. After some time, Eclipse radios. I found something. He has found the door that Roxy and the others used to escape. Culrus and the other members of the Shadow Triad arrive to the door. Culrus presents the seal of the king, and it starts to glow. But when it stops, nothing happens. Eclipse criticizes Culrus, but then Necrosis pushes them through the door. Culrus smiles and orders them to bring back the black orb, and not to return until they have it. Then they disappear beyond the wall. Back with Ash and the group, they are arguing with each other. Ash insists that Victini can take them there. Then they hear a loud cry from deep within the corridors. Roxy says, I don't know what that is, but it sounds dangerous. Iris agrees. No matter what they do, they need to do it fast. Damon finally breaks down and says, okay, Victini, can you take us to the room of the king? But Victini refuses to take them. It doesn't trust Damon out of the way he's been acting. Then, from the shadows of the corridor, the group is attacked as an energy wave fills the room. Riolu returns fire and hits something. A loud roar is let out, and from the shadows steps a Pokemon. Iris says, that's a Darudagon, but its colors are off. Carlita wonders how it got down here, as there isn't supposed to be anything down here. Ash says, I don't know, but I think we're gonna have to battle it. Riolu, Axew, and Zorora all stand ready as their trainers give them commands to attack. The Darudagon just pushes them all back. It's like it doesn't even feel the moves. Ash notices this and doesn't like it. He orders a quick attack. Zorora and Axew follow in suit, but they are all caught in a Dragon Pulse, pushing them all back with a great damage. The trio can barely move, but Riolu manages to stand back up, and it's glowing with aura once again. Riolu refuses to give up, and Ash won't either. The two are in perfect sync, and just like in their last few battles, Rielu's power and speed increase enough to match the dragon, but not enough to beat it. Then, as Riolu is on its last leg, Victini nears it and starts to glow. It then motions in what looks like a transfer of power to Riolu. Victini then stares down Darudagon intensely. Ash orders Riolu for one final attack. Riolu rushes in with more power and speed than Ash has seen up until this point. Darudagon retaliates with a massive Dragon Pulse, but Riolu pushes through it with an Aura Sphere, and it lands in a flash of energy. Once Ash can see what happened, Riolu is down, and so is Darudagon. It still appears to be moving. Ash rushes to Riolu and grabs it, but it's not moving. Ash knows this is bad. Victini then comes to Riolu, concerned about it and its well-being. It then mentions to Ash to follow it. Ash knows to where, and he takes off with the others in tow, asking where they're headed, leaving Darudagon behind. But it is not happy, and it gets to its feet and gives chase. All the while, the Shadow Triad have been watching from the darkness. As Ash and others move down the corridor that Victini headed to, Damon and Carlita are asking why they're going this way. When they get to a wall with an odd marking on it, Victini's paw print, and says, I can feel it. Iris asks what? It's here. The energy of Zekrom Victini puts its paw to the door and it begins to glow, giving the group the ability to pass through into the king's chamber. Once inside, they see it, the energy veins flowing through the room, and at the center, the remains of the king. Carlita and Damon stare in awe as Ash lays Riolu on one of the energy veins, allowing it to recover. Once Riolu wakes up, Ash is relieved, as well as Victini. Victini and Riolu start to play again, as everyone searches the room for what they desire, the black orb. Damon remarks, "I can't believe that the seal of the king was literal. Victini was the seal of the king. All of the stories were true. Victini, I'm sorry." Victini looks at him as Riolu and it play. Roxy then asks if anyone noticed the strange glow between Victini and Riolu earlier. Then, Riolu's power grew exponentially. Carlita says, "That's the power of Victini. It's known as the victory Pokemon." Ash says, "Really?" Carlita says, "Yes. Legend tells that anyone who Victini befriends will always know victory," and says, "I would think so. It's been trapped here in this castle for nearly 3,000 years. Everyone says, "What?" and says, "Yes. According to this wall, Victini has been sealed inside of the castle and it can't exceed the bounds of the Liberty Garden." Carlita says, "That explains the last passage in the journal. Victini is the guardian of this room, no, of the castle," and then goes on to say that only in the eyes of the king can one find the truth in ideals. Iris thinks only in the eyes of the king. She then looks to where the king is looking. There, she points, a wall with a marking on it, but one stands out and says, "The seal of the king." He then asks Victini if it would place its paw on the wall. Victini looks at Ash and Riolu, and they both nod in approval. So, Victini does, and the wall glows. Then, it moves, and behind it, resting in a hold, sits the black stone of Zekrom, and pulls it out, and says he can feel the presence of Zekrom. "This is the real deal," he says. Then Ash hears it. As a sense of relief overcomes everyone, and they let their guards down, busting through the wall comes Gerudogon. It is weak, but it is angry. It attacks Riolu. Ash orders counter right off the bat to try and put it down for good this time. Riolu is successful in this tactic, and it sends Gerudogon back into a wall right by in, causing him to drop the black orb. As it rolls, it is picked up by a familiar person, Necrosis, and the other members of the Shadow Triad, and yells no, but before anything can be done, they are gone. En looks on in shock, as does everyone else. Ash says, "We can't wait around. We have to go after them." They all agree, and they start to make their way out. When Gerudogon stands back up, it just won't stay down, and it's specifically attacking Riolu. Ash tells everyone to go on ahead. They're gonna have to stop this thing before they can proceed. Roxy says, "Well, how are you gonna do that?" He responds, "Simple. I'm gonna catch it. Now go," Ash says. So the others take off in pursuit of the Shadow Triad, as Ash and Riolu prepare to battle. Back with the Shadow Triad, they've made their way outside to the camp that Culrus set up. They hand over the orb to him, and he says, "Finally." Necrosis says, "Well, now what? Who will bond with a dragon to awaken it?" Culrus says, "You fool. We tried that once, and it failed. So this time, I'm going to control it by artificial means." Andriel says, "How?" Culrus says, "This machine has the ability to control Pokemon and bring out their immense power with energy waves that it produces. It will take time to revive it." "How long?" Eclipse says. Culrus says, "A few moments." "Why?" "Because we got company," Andriel says, as Iris, En, Damon, Carlita, and Roxy make their way to the camp. The Shadow Triad then send out their Pokemon. Roxy and Iris tell Axew and Zoroark to be ready for battle. Necrosis tells Iris and Roxy that this is cute, but they won't be getting in the way. Necrosis, Eclipse, and Andriel all order attacks, while the grunts keep Damon and Carlita busy, but En is able to sneak through and get to Culrus. Upon confronting him, Culrus just laughs at En. "Look who's here, the failed king. Have you come to reclaim your birthright?" En says, "No, I've come to stop my father from enslaving people and Pokemon, and to stop you from causing them harm." Culrus laughs. "Harm? You think I'm harming them? My dear, confused friend, I intend to help them by bringing out their true power." Just then, Culrus machines beep, and Zekrom has started to react, glowing intensely. Culrus is overcome with joy and laughs, and questioning, "How? You didn't bond with it. Zekrom didn't recognize you as its hero." Culrus says, "We have no use for such trivial notions. With the technology I've developed, I can control Zekrom and bring out its full power, and now no one will stop us." As Zekrom grows in size, awakening for the first time in 3,000 years. As the Shadow Triad, Roxy, and Iris battle, Zekrom captures the attention of everyone around, stopping them in their tracks. En attempts to reach out to Zekrom, but it doesn't notice him. Culrus says, "It's useless. Thanks to my technology, Zekrom will only obey me." Culrus then orders Zekrom to attack our heroes, as the Shadow Triad dodge, telling Culrus to not be so reckless. Culrus just laughs. "We're only getting started," as Zekrom fires lightning, striking everyone around, including the Shadow Triad. Culrus is hypnotized. This is what he wanted to see, how much power he can bring out of Zekrom. With that, he turns his machine to maximum, but the result is not what Culrus expected. Zekrom attacks everyone and everything, including Culrus, knocking him from his machine. Iris and Roxy try to fight back, but it's useless. All of their Pokemon are easily knocked out. Even the Shadow Triad and their Pokemon only provide a brief moment of relief, as they too are taken out by Zekrom. Both Iris and N try to take a stance against Zekrom, pleading with it to stop, attempting to reach its spirit to quell its rage, but it's useless. The two are fired upon by Zekrom. The lightning is too quick to dodge, and the two think that this is the end. As they watch their doom rush towards them, it is intercepted by an Aura Sphere. Iris looks back, and there stands Ash and Riolu. Iris calls to them as Ash and Riolu rush over. "Did you stop Druddigon?" Iris asks. Ash holds up a Pokeball. "Yep, but it's in bad shape. It refused to go down without a fight. Eventually, a point-blank Aura Sphere knocked it out." Ash then asks what's going on. Iris and N break everything down, and how Zekrom is attacking everyone. Not even the Shadow Triad can stop it. Culrus then approaches the group with talks of teaming up to stop Zekrom. N is immediately opposed to this idea. Culrus says, "Well, you could summon Reshiram to stop Zekrom. Then there would be no need to team up." N grits his teeth. "That's not an option," he says. Culrus says, "Well, I don't think we have any other choice." Iris, Roxy, and the Shadow Triad are opposed to this as well, refusing to work together. Ash then steps forward. "What do I have to do?" Iris says, "What?" Ash, "This is Team Plasma we're talking about. Why would you help them?" Ash says, "I'm not helping them. I'm trying to save everyone who's in danger. If that means that I have to help Team Plasma, then I don't think I have a choice." The Shadow Triad then say, "You're on your own," and they vanish. Culrus says, "Forget them. We need to focus on Zekrom. We need to shut down my machine. If we can cut the connection between it and Zekrom, then it will revert to its stone form." Ash says, "Okay, we'll do it. Right, Riolu?" Riolu nods, and they get to work. Riolu, Victini, and Ash will draw the attention of Zekrom, while Iris, Roxy, and N guide Culrus through the lightning strikes to his machine. They split up. Riolu fires an Aura Sphere at Zekrom, but it barely flinches. Ash calls to Zekrom, which surprisingly it responds, and N notices. Ash tells Zekrom that he will be his opponent, so be ready. For an unknown reason, Zekrom responds to this and attacks Riolu and Victini, and the battle ensues. At first, Riolu and Victini are able to dodge and stay ahead of Zekrom, attacking, causing minimal damage. Zekrom is getting frustrated, not being able to hit the two, so in response, it charges a massive amount of electricity, and then it happens. A fusion bolt that envelops everything, catching Riolu and Victini. Ash calls to them as he loses sight of the two. Once he can see, he notices Riolu and Victini are laying there. It appears Victini protected Riolu, taking most of the attack. Ash rushes to them. Riolu stands up and looks to Victini. It can sense it's hurt bad. Ash tries to wake Victini with no response. Then, a light captures Ash's attention. He looks over, and Riolu is glowing an aura, more intensely than it has ever before. This captures the attention of everyone, especially N and Culrus, but for different reasons. Ash picks up Victini and tells Riolu, "It's up to you, Riolu. You're the only one who can stop Zekrom. I'm behind you, buddy." Ash then orders a quick attack, which strikes with enough power to force the dragon back, catching it off guard. Then, Riolu fires an Aura Sphere, and when it hits, you can hear Zekrom roar in pain. Ash tells Riolu to keep pushing. They can do it. Ash and Riolu have never been more in sync than in this moment, and as their ideals align, it causes Zekrom to pulsate in pain. This prompts the dragon to charge another attack, and it bursts with aura as a fusion bolt envelops everything. Ash is in the direct line of fire, and Riolu rushes to intercept the attack. Ash calls to Riolu as they are enveloped in a light once more. Once Ash can see again, there stands Riolu holding back the attack. The little Pokemon is struggling, barely able to stand. Ash calls to Riolu, "I have complete faith in you, buddy. I know you have the strength to overcome this." Then, just as Riolu starts to buckle, Ash calls to it once more, and the aura around it surges, stronger than ever, pushing back the attack and enveloping Riolu and Victini in a light once more. Everyone just watches in complete disbelief, unsure of what just happened and the fate of the three. As the light begins to fade, they can see Ash and Victini, but where Riolu stands is still surging with aura. The aura slowly fades, and there stands a Pokemon. Culrus just responds, "I never would have thought that this could happen." Ash just looks on in awe. "Riolu," he says. It turns and nods at Ash. Ash says, "This is amazing." But before anyone can gather themselves, Zekrom attacks again. Ash tells Riolu to counter with an Aura Sphere. Riolu fires one that hits Zekrom with enough force, knocking it down. Riolu then goes on the attack. This opening allows Culrus to get to his machine. He tries to shut it down, but it won't respond. The machine machine has been overloaded and is emitting energy waves on maximum. Colress says, oh no. Iris says, what is it? Colress says, his machine won't respond to him. There's no way to shut it down. So what do we do? Iris asks. Colress says, it means that unless Riolu can find the power to beat Zekrom, then it will rampage until it runs out of energy. Iris says, then we need to get to Ash. Over at the battle, Riolu seems to be evenly matched with Zekrom. It matches it blow for blow, but it is unable to close out the battle. While this is happening, Ash looks on, and Iris manages to get to him. She tells Ash that the only way to stop Zekrom is to knock it out. Ash, unsure on how they would do this, looks on at Riolu. Damon then tells Ash, the answer is Victini. Ash says, what do you mean? Damon says, do you remember earlier when Riolu fought Rutagon? Victini gave its power to Riolu, allowing it to defeat it. Maybe Victini can do it again. Ash says, one problem, it took a lot of damage, and it's unresponsive. Damon says, I may have something for that, and he pulls out an item. Ash asks what it is. Damon says it is something that was brought here from another region by one of his ancestors long ago. It is known as the Sacred Ash. It has the power to revive Pokemon. Ash puts down Victini and takes the Sacred Ash from Damon. He sprinkles it all over Victini. It takes a moment, but Victini eventually wakes up, surprised and confused. Ash asks Victini if it's okay. Victini nods and then looks around. It sees Riolu and it battling Zekrom. Ash tells Victini that Riolu needs its help. Can you help it like it did before? Victini stares at Ash, then nods and takes off toward Riolu. Over at the battle, Riolu is starting to tire, and Victini can see it. It begins to glow with aura like before. Then it puts its paw on Riolu, transferring all of its energy to it. Riolu begins to surge with aura once more. Ash orders Riolu to use Aura Sphere. Riolu charges the brightest Aura Sphere it ever has. Zekrom, in response, charges another fusion bolt. The two Pokemon stare each other down, firing their final attacks. The two attacks move rapidly towards each other as they connect. It becomes clear that the fusion bolt is outmatched by the Aura Sphere as it cuts through it, connecting with Zekrom. The Aura Sphere envelops Zekrom with energy and aura exploding on contact. Zekrom roars in pain. And when the dust settles, Zekrom is gone. And says, the orb. Look for it. They all fan out, but they can't find it. Then, Iris notices something. Colress has vanished as well, and says, this isn't good. That means Team Plasma now has the black orb. The sun now up on the horizon, Ash looks to Riolu, who has returned to its normal form. Ash thinks to himself, what was that transformation? Is it safe? But Riolu appears to be fine, as it plays with Victini. After everyone cleans up and catches up on some much needed rest, they all decide to part ways. Ash looks around, and he sees that everything around the castle has been decimated. One of the ancient monuments around the castle has been shattered. What seems to be a pillar was destroyed in the battle, but this has an interesting effect. That pillar was actually part of a barrier that was keeping Victini locked in the castle, and no one knew, as for the first time in 3,000 years, Victini is actually able to fly free away from the castle, as it takes off exploring the woods around the castle, then coming back to greet everyone. Ash is just relieved. He's glad that Victini is safe, and so is Riolu. With that, there's not really much anybody else can do, so they all head back to the castle to clean up and catch up on some much needed rest. After about a week or so, they've all decided to head their own ways. Victini as well, as it has decided that it wants to go explore the Pokemon world. After all, it has been trapped in the castle for 3,000 years. N decides to join Ash, Roxy, and Iris, heading on their way to Absolute City, as he wants to talk with Drayden, the gym leader, about something. Damon and Carlita have decided that since Zekrom is no longer being held in the castle, they want to go on a vacation and do something for themselves. They all part ways, and while Ash and his group are walking, N asks Ash a question. Hey Ash, did you get that Riolu from a damaged egg? Ash just looks at N in shock. Meanwhile, back on the Plasma Freight, Ghetsis is belittling Colress for his newest failure. I left you in charge once we got inside the castle, thinking you can handle it, and you come back empty-handed? Colress calmly replies, but I didn't fail, as he pulls out the black orb. As a matter of fact, I'm ready for stage 2 of our plan. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like for the YouTube algorithm. Also, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to interact more with me, don't forget to join the Discord and follow me on Twitter. And if you want to support me any further, head over to my Patreon. Just $5 a month gets you 1 week early access to all of my videos. These awesome people have already donated, so I can continue to bring you the content that you love. The links for all of these are in the description below. Anyway, I'm Ronin Charizard, and I'll see you in the next video.